Before grinding, inspect the floor for potential obstacles. These include floor drains, floor receptacles, large expansion joints, and floor studs. Mark these obstacles so that the machine doesn't contact them. Determine whether you're grinding wet or dry. If wet, have a water supply, squeegees, and automatic scrubber ready. If dry, have a concrete vacuum connected to the Mongrel and a means to remove all the ground concrete from the floor. To begin the grinding process, choose a corner of the floor space as a starting point. Install half of the weights on the unit and fill the water tank if grinding wet. If you are grinding dry, connect the dry vacuum to the Mongrel. The first stages of the grinding process can be performed wet or dry. However, wet grinding is important for natural stone surfaces such as marble, granite, and terrazzo. It also is performed at times to control dust and keep the tooling cool. Refer to Chapter 6 or Chapter 7 if initial deep scrubbing, stripping, paint, epoxy, or coating removal is necessary. For wet grinding, your PowerStar Mongrel is equipped with an onboard 9-gallon water tank. You may wish to have an assistant on hand during the wet grind process to keep the water tank full or hose down the work area as you continue to grind. The wet diamonds will degrade quickly if they are used on a dry floor. While it is possible to have too little water on the floor, it is impossible to have too much. To begin, open the water control valve and flood the floor under the diamond drivers thoroughly. Then reduce the flow of water to the desired rate. To engage the grinders, turn the clutch switch, located in the center of the dash panel, to the on position. The green light on the operator panel will come on. Engage the clutch control bail on the operator handle and grind an area of approximately 3 square feet. Disengage the grinders, shut the water control off, and squeegee the ground area to determine whether you need more or less weight. Add or remove weights as needed and repeat the process until the desired effect is achieved. Look at the diamond disc scratch pattern on the floor. Determine if the left and right sides are cutting evenly. If the leading head is cutting heavier, lower the rear axle. If the trailing head is cutting heavier, raise the rear axle. Important: always keep your PowerStar Mongrel in motion when the drivers are engaged. Allowing the Mongrel to run in one spot without moving the machine may damage the floor. For dry grinding, the Mongrel is equipped with a dust scoop that can connect to a dry concrete vacuum. We recommend our PowerStar Vac. As with wet grinding, make sure the correct diamond discs are used. It is beneficial to have an assistant maneuver the vac during grinding. Achieving the desired effect when grinding concrete requires skill and experience. You, as the operator, need to be able to read the floor in order to determine which diamond grit will deliver the results that best meet your customer's expectations. However, there are a few rules of thumb that you can follow to ensure good results as you gain experience and expertise. Whether grinding and polishing new construction or restoring old floor, you will use diamond and pad drivers. The grinding process begins with a coarse grit diamond and finishes with a very fine grit diamond. Each stage polishes the concrete to a brighter, smoother surface. The first cut is the most critical. All deep cutting passes, leveling, and correcting of imperfections must be performed in this first step. Problems that are not addressed in the first cut will remain in the finished floor. The Mongrel comes standard with flex heads that will conform to small dips and rises in uneven floors while still creating a smooth surface. Optional fixed heads are also available that will grind the surface flat. PowerStar offers segmented metal, sintered metal, semi-metal, and resin diamond discs. Each comes in different grits to allow the operator to achieve the desired result no matter what the initial floor conditions. We recommend that you use the highest grit diamonds that will achieve the desired result. Go low enough to remove the undesirable imperfections and no more. Going too low will result in excessive grinding, time, and cost. As you move into higher grit discs, you will increase your RPM. In addition, as you transition from segmented metal or sintered metal to semi-metal and then to resin, the driver speed will need to increase. During the first lower RPM stages, you will remove a lot of material and you will want your forward movement to proceed at a much slower pace. You will know when you have selected the proper maximum cut diamond for the first coarse cut once you have achieved the desired effect in your test area. Your ability to determine the desired effect will come with experience. Remember not to be too aggressive. It is better to take off too little surface material than too much, and it is better to back up one step than 2 or 3 steps, or worse, to have a floor that does not meet expectations. A second person can be helpful when you are grinding wet. Along with keeping the water tank full and keeping the floor wet, an assistant can also help you squeegee or sweep off the area you are grinding so that you can see the effect that the diamonds are creating as you grind, rather than waiting to discover problems after the entire cutting pass has been completed. For dry grinding, an assistant can help maneuver the dry vacuum and remove ground concrete from the floor. Start the first pass on one side of the floor, preferably with the right leading head next to the wall, and grind along the wall until you reach a stopping point. Rather than turning and grinding along this wall, back up and move the unit so that the leading head is centered on the lap area of the 2 heads. Move forward to touch off the wall, and then grind backward to your starting point. All passes with the same grit should be made in the same direction. After the first cut is complete, clean the floor of all grinding residue and double clean the floor between grit changes. Double cleaning is extremely important during grit changes, as diamond grit is lost during the grinding process and should not be allowed to remain on the floor during the next grinding step. It is important that you decide how you will address the floor from one pass to another so that you won't unintentionally leave a pattern. Remember that all passes with the same grit should be made in the same direction. Each new cut with a different grit should proceed at a 45 or 90-degree angle from the previous cut. This will help prevent leaving behind unwanted patterns. This is especially important in the metal bond and low grit cut, as patterns created in the coarse cuts will appear in the floor's reflective surface after polishing with the higher grits. When you transition from one type of diamond to the next, you may need to drop a grit level. For example, if the preceding cut used a 220 grit metal bond diamond, the next cut will use a 120 grit semi-metal or resin bond diamond. This practice will allow you to properly blend the scratch patterns of the different diamond types. As a general rule, when you increase the grit value, you increase the engine RPM. This results in a faster tip speed for the diamond drivers. As the tip speed increases, so should your rate of travel. The end result is that you are polishing more square feet per hour in the higher grit ranges. Be sure you have the proper amount of weight attached to the mongrel before you proceed with each grinding step. When changing discs between grinding steps, it is a common practice to remove one weight per grit change until only one weight or no weights are needed. After testing the grind effect between each grinding step, you should use your best judgment in determining the amount of weight required. For instructions on changing disc to the next grit, see Chapter 3 of this DVD, Preparing for Operation. If densification or staining is desired, we recommend that this step be completed after the 200 grit resin grind. However, the proper point at which to perform staining and densification for a particular application may vary from this general rule. Ultimately, the operator must make this determination based on experience. Some prefer to do staining with the more open grain, while others like the grain to be closed. Be certain to follow the stain manufacturer's directions closely. Leaving excess stain on the floor may affect the final finish of the floor. After densification has been completed, polishing continues until the desired result is achieved. This is a dry grind using a diamond that is double in value from the grit of the diamond used in the last wet grind. For example, if the final wet grind is performed with a 400 grit diamond, polishing will be performed with an 800 grit diamond. Polishing at higher grit levels is typically performed dry. However, the mongrel can accommodate both wet and dry polishing programs. Please note that the diamond grits are not always graded in values that are exact doubles. If this is the case, use the diamond that is closest to double the value of the preceding grit. Diamonds are available in grits as high as 8,500, but generally 3,500 grit is the highest value used in polishing concrete. After the final polish is complete, the floor should be cleaned, including the perimeter. At this time, a surface treatment top coat may be applied. We recommend PowerStar stain-resistant top coat.